Hello, and welcome to another edition of Hidden Treasures with the Hopkinton Historical Society. I am your co-host, Jim Cousins, and I'm really happy to be here with John Palmer, who is the president of the Hopkinton Historical Society, as he brings us stories from deep in the archives. So, follow along as we go. Hello, John.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
Good. I'm good, thank you. Now, I know we have two stories to talk about, and the second one is behind the wrapper. So we're going to hold on to that.
Right.
And first we're going to talk about Hopkinton's connection to
The Yangtze River Patrol. We have a Hopkinton resident. He's passed away now, but he was a Hopkinton resident. And I knew his family quite well. And I knew of him. I didn't know anything about his background, and I certainly didn't know about the Yangtze River Patrol, for the reason is I never even heard of the Yangtze River. But anyways, I got curious, and my friend provided me with an awful lot of material about her father, and then I did my digging to get where was the Yangtze River and what was this Yangtze River Patrol all about. And I think it's a very interesting story. Anybody in the Navy would probably be particularly interested in this, but it's a good tale. And of course, this is all true. This is not a fabrication. But anyways, his name was George Briggs. He lived in several places in Hopkinton. His final resting place before he passed away was on Maple Street, so he's downtowner.
Okay.
But I want to tell you about the Yangtze River because it was kind of a mystery, but it turns out that it's the third largest river in the world, third longest river in the world. Only the Nile and the Amazon are longer. The Yangtze is in southern China. It runs from Tibet to Shanghai. It flows 3,900 miles, but only 1,500, 2,000 miles are navigable. The rest of it is you can't traverse it, at least by ship. I have a photo that shows the Yangtze. This is Shanghai here, and this is where it originates in Tibet. And this is the furthest point you can navigate is Shigong. And anyways, I like that one because it gives you an idea of the length of the river. The English, the French, and the Dutch, they traded along the Yangtze, particularly in Shanghai, long before America was discovered, or at least before America was settled. They were there. They were trading their bullion for tea and opium and whatever. But anyways, trading was going on. And because of that, the U.S. at some point, actually I know the point, it was in 1858, the U.S. got into a treaty, signed a treaty with China to allow its merchants to peddle their wares on the Yangtze River. And shortly after that, and the Yangtze was also prone to piracy and shenanigans by the locals. So to protect the American interests, and this is the sole reason for the Navy, to protect the American business interests, the U.S. Navy formed the Yangtze River Patrol. And they would patrol the river, and this went on from 1866, right after the Civil War ended, until 1942, right when World War II was beginning. 76-year span. our U.S. Navy patrolled this river. I mean, who would know? I certainly didn't.
Right.
Anyways, I want to tell you about George Briggs. And this is kind of fascinating, at least what it is to me. He was born in Chelsea in 1902. He enlisted in the Navy when he was 20, I think, in 1920, no, 18. And he enlisted in the Navy at the Boston Navy Yard in 1920. This is a picture of George when he was enlisted.
Oh, this is from the slideshows that we host on Ice Camp.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, so we shared the same picture. George Edward Briggs. I got this from his daughter. Now this one is, I don't think you have this one though. His father was Jimmy Briggs. And Jimmy was a champion lightweight boxer. And I have a photo of Jimmy. Jimmy's the one with the hat, the second one from the right with the hat. And this is a photo of a group of boxers having a reunion in front of Mechanics Hall in Boston, talking about their careers. And this is gonna, this boxing is gonna show up again. But I remember when I was younger, that was the only thing on TV was boxing. I watched a lot of boxing matches. You don't see that anymore, you know. But anyways,
Yeah. And you were right, we don't have that picture.
no, you don't have that picture. But so that's who Jimmy was. He joined the Yangtze River Patrol. It was in 1920. He went for I think 3 months training in at the in Hampton, Virginia. I forget the Navy Yard, but anyways, it was training. Then he was put on a ship. It wasn't a Yangtze River ship. The Yangtze River was, by the way, was quite shallow, and so you couldn't put a ship that required a lot of draft, I think it's called, into the river. He was on the regular ship. It was the USS North Dakota for a year and a half. He was assigned as fireman. He was a fireman. And I think a fireman is somebody that was responsible for the boilers on the ship, the power. So he'd be working in the boiler room. In 1922, he was assigned to the Yangtze River Patrol. His first ship was called the USS Preble. It was a destroyer, and it patrolled the Yangtze River. It was based out of the Philippine Islands, and the Preble was built at Bath Iron Works in Bath, Maine. So it's got a local connection. Anyways, this is a photo of the Preble. This is the USS Preble. It's a good-sized ship.
Yeah.
Number 345. All the ships had numbers. And he was on the Preble for 9 months or so. And then he was transferred to the USS Hulbert. And he got promoted to fireman second class on that ship. And this is a picture of the Hulbert.
It's a good section.
Same thing. And he was served on that for a while, and then he got assigned to 2 more ships. The USS Villalobos, it was a gunboat, and that was in 1924, and his last assignment was on the USS Palos. These were both Yangtze River designed ships. And I have a colored picture of those ships in my collection here.
Okay.
Here they are. The top one is the Villa Labos, and the bottom one is the Palos. And those are little smaller design ships, and they were able to go 1,500, 2,000 miles up the Yangtze.
Okay.
So he's in the boiler room of these ships for 3 years. He had re-enlisted, came down with tuberculosis, and I'm sure it was from being, his job was caused that, the conditions. So then he was transferred to a naval hospital in the Philippines for a while, and then he was transferred to a naval hospital in San Francisco Bay for a while, and then he was discharged. So they used him. He was left with tuberculosis. He was discharged in 1927. I say it's bad, but I have an outlook on this. There's good and bad. He loved his job. He loved being in the Navy. And one of the things he loved in particular was he inherited his father's boxing skills because he was the Naval Pacific Fleet light featherweight boxing champion for 2 years. So he took up the boxing too. And this is a photo of George Edward Briggs as a boxer.
Okay.
And when he was in Shanghai, he saved a person that was drowning in the Yangtze. He jumped in, saved him, and received the Yangtze Service Medal for valor. And this is his service medal.
Oh.
After he got out of the service, he went back to Boston, and he made his way to Hopkinton. He got introduced to. No, he stayed in Boston, but his father had a connection to Hopkinton, introduced him to a lady by the name of Mary McHatton, and they lived in Hopkinton, the McHattons. And he and Mary must have hit it off right away, because 2 months later they eloped. And they had two children, Kathy Briggs Petrelli, who's still alive. She's at St. Patrick's Nursing Home in Framingham. She would love to hear from you if you're interested. And their other daughter was Rosemary Lynch, the news reporter. So, anyways, he died in 1953, and his funeral was at St. John's, and he's in St. John's Cemetery right now.
Awesome.
So that's the story.
A great story.
Story of George Edward Briggs and the Yangtze River Patrol.
I love that. It's a great Hopkinton story.
Yeah.
And now, let us turn our attention to the second story that you have brought for us here.
So today, the first one, George Briggs, is sort of a serious story. This next one is not serious. It's real. It's true. I'm not sure you call it funny or sad or just what you call it. But I put a title on the name of this presentation called "The Two-Colored House." There's another name for it, but anyways, there's a large double house, or there was a large double house with 120 acres on Spring Street in Hopkinton, right at the intersection of Pond. It's an old house. It was there for a long time. We found it on the map in the Historical Society going back to 1831. The house was owned at that time by a family by the name of Gibbs. Fanny Gibbs was listed on the map. Anyways, the Gibbs had two children, at least two children, John and Lawson Gibbs. And when they parents died, they were left the house. Wasn't joint and survivor. It was just they were each left half the house, and they had trouble with whose part was who belonged to what part of the house, and a lot of difficulties arose because of the way it was two different people inherited the same property, and trouble started, and then they in turn had children. One was the Temple. His name was Charles Temple. He inherited the portion of the house that John Gibbs lived in, and the other and another person inherited the portion that Lawrence Gibbs lived in. His name was Willard Wheeler. There was a lot of intermarriage between the Wheelers and the Gibbs and the Temples, and so they were related to each other, but they were not amicable. They didn't really talk to one another. Anyways, the first major incident occurred in 1905. The house needed to be painted, and both Willard Wheeler and his wife Annie as one party, and Charles Temple and his wife Viola, the other party, living in the house. They couldn't decide what color to paint it. So the Wheelers went first. They painted it green. They painted half the house green, the half they lived in. They painted green. Not too long after that, the Temples painted their side red. And because of this, the house got a lot of notoriety. It was well known around the area. We're in the west side of Whitehall Pond at the time, but Lake Whitehall was a major vacation destination in the summer for people from Worcester and the surrounding areas, and the word was around about the two-colored house. And one day, a newspaper reporter from the Worcester Telegram shows up. He wants to interview the Temples and the Wheelers about the house, and then he wrote the story, and we have the newspaper article from 1909, Worcester Telegram newspaper article about the house, about the story he wrote. But this becomes the story. Kind of describes what's going on here. Mr. Temple was a carpenter, by the way, and Mr. Wheeler was a farmer. Mr. Temple, what he did is probably the first act of that's viciousness, maybe. That's probably a little too strong, but anyways, he drew a line down the center of the house, and he cut the door in half, but it wasn't in half it was follow the line. The door must have been a little off center. And then he constructed a partition that ran from the attic to the basement. And he put up a partition. And he cut the door, he constructed the door so you could get into his side but not the other side. And so we have Mr. and Mrs. Wheeler, their side, you can't get in the front door because it was so small. You'd have to go sideways to get in. So what they had to do to access their second floor, they had to put 2 ladders outside the house with a walkway in between, a board in between. That's how they could access their second floor, because the stairs were on the temple side. The Boston Globe published a picture of those ladders. So I know this is true because, it's in the Globe. I found the article, but I couldn't figure out how to open it up. And I wanted to actually show you the article, but I know it existed because of the mention. So we have the house cut in half. We have non-access by either party. Then what happens is the spring that provided the water for the house was on the Wheeler side, and Mr. Wheeler was the farmer, so he needed the water. Temple didn't have he lost his water. So one side didn't have water, so what did Temple do? He dug a well, no problem. Then we have later on, we have this story I can't verify. It's printed in the Historical Society, but we have the women in the house had drilled peepholes in the partition so they could sort of spy on each other. We have a description of this house. I'm going to show you the house in a second, but we have a description that says that. But before I do that, I want to read a couple of things that were in the newspaper. So the newspaper man asked Mr. Temple about why did you cut the door? He says, I did. The answer Temple said is, I did him no injustice. I only took my own half of the house and no more. He has plenty of room for a door if he wants it. Then the newspaper man asked him, why did you paint the house red? And Temple says, oh, just for variety. He was the first to paint, and when he painted his side green, I thought a nice red on my side would make an effective contrast, and there you are. And it goes on, and then the reporter wants to know, is there any chance of making up the troubles? The feud, they call it, or making up. And Temple says, I had rather have him just where he is. We don't fight, and we don't have any sort of trouble. He simply does not stop for me, and I don't stop for him. So that was on the Temple side. Now the newspaper man, to get to the Wheeler side, he had to walk down the driveway, out to Spring Street, up Wheeler's driveway to talk to Wheeler, because you can't cross the property. So he goes up to Wheeler, and Wheeler says, if I had known you were a newspaper man, you would have never passed by my door. I do not have a word to say. We let the other parties do all the talking and all the quarreling. Not a word has come from me, and not a word is going to come from me now. I don't stoop to such business. If I want to quarrel with a party, I want it to be with somebody worth quarreling with. So that kind of gives you an attitude. We have two very independent people here who are related, but they don't talk to each other. They don't help each other out. But it's so it's I don't know what you call it. Anyways, I want to show you the house. So this is the house. It doesn't look red and green, but it's clearly red and green, unless they had a repaint. But this is the temple side, and here's the door that got cut in half here, and Temple either expanded his door or wasn't exactly half. He has enough room to get in and out, but this is a very small amount. And this is where the ladders were on this side, so the wheelers could access their second floor.
Wow. That's amazing.
That house was there until 1956. It burned down. The property, before it burnt down, the house was rented to, both sides were rented to the same party, Giordano family. They rented it. It burned down, was sold to a third party, and has been since redeveloped. So it's no longer there anymore. But
all right. Now, this is in your collection. Does it hang on the wall, or is it part of the collection?
No, this is on the wall.
Okay.
There's a little room behind at the back of the building. I took it off the wall to bring to the show.
Okay.
And it's going back today and be put back. But anyways.
All right. Hey, thank you so much for spending the time, John. It's always so interesting.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yes.
Appreciate my appreciation.
All right, and thank you for joining us for this episode, and we hope you come back for more hidden treasures from the Hopkinton Historical Society, and stop by. They're open on Mondays from 2 o'clock until 5?
5, yeah.
2 to 5, and you can actually see this picture and many other artifacts from the life of Hopkinton. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.